All right. Graham's asked me to talk a little bit about brand value and the value of brands. Within the Interbrand Group, this is something that we do a lot of. So I'm not going to try and sell anything. If I start doing that, chuck stuff at me, I can work with it. It's also not going to be a lecture. I don't lecture well. I'm asked to tell war stories, usually around brands. And with this kind of audience, with you guys in the room, that's exactly what I want to do. So at any stage, any questions that you might have, fire them straight through to me, no problems at all. All right, so a couple of things. I've kind of split the talk into two parts. One is valuing brands and the process that you'd go through to get an economic value to a brand. And I think whether you're in marketing or in branding, if you're a student, if you're already a practitioner, if you like, understanding that brands are assets and that a brand has a massive, massive value is a critical part to what we do. I think we see far too often that in big corporates at board level, sometimes the brand is seen, or marketing is even seen as an expense and doesn't get the credibility that it needs at a board level. But the moment you can start proving to your board that there is a financial value to a brand, the conversation changes. And it makes securing marketing budget and measuring brand a whole lot easier. And it elevates marketers. One of the problems we have as marketers is that sometimes we're not taken seriously. Marketing degrees are, I suppose, they've been around for a while, but are faster and faster now getting credibility, courtesy of work of the IMM, of MASA, and a host of other organizations. So the fact that you guys are here, absolutely magic. You can prove value in the brands that you create going forward or the brands that you work on. Better still, it's a great place to be. It's a great career to have as well. So I split into two. The first part is valuing brands. I'm not going to get into the depth of it, but very basically three components to how we go about valuing a brand. And the first one is the financial forecast. We look at the role that the brand plays in creating money, if you like, and we look at the brand strength. And these are the three items that sit in there. Financial forecast, very, very simple. In any organization, there is an element of net asset values or net present value that you can look at in your finances. And what we try and do is we try and determine out of the money that is created in a business, the revenue that is produced, what element of that is directly attributable to the brand. Now, if you work for a company like F&B, Bernice for an example, within F&B, they create an automatic amount of demand because there is tremendous goodwill in the brand F&B. There may be patents, there's the iPad apps, there's these items that are, some of them are tangible, some of them are intangible. Within that whole element sits an additional part, which is the brand itself. So when we start looking at the economic value added model of the value of a company, we need to try and find out what element of the value of that company can be directly attributed to the brand itself. And it's forward looking, which is quite important. Second part is the role of brand, which I'm going to deal with in a bit more detail. That's the main part of the talk. And the third part is the brand strength, which I'll also go into in a bit more detail, being the last part of the talk, if you like. But by combining these three elements, we get a very good idea as to what the money is, how strong the brand is, what role does the brand play, and that allows us to put forward brand valuation, which is now an acceptable number that can be put onto balance sheets of companies, can be used for mergers and acquisitions, and often, of course, is used for premiums in the merger and acquisition space if a company, for example, is being bought and the brand has additional value. And at the beginning of last year, Interbrand got the first ISO globally, ISO 10668, which we actually helped write for brand valuation. So there's a couple of companies now out in the market, a few of our competitors as well, that can do proper brand valuation. And this is a good thing, because the more organizations understand that the value of brand exists, the more we have students like yourselves or practitioners like yourselves again, talking about brand as a valued asset, the better it is for all of us, no doubt. And of course, Interbrand's got a bit of a jump on this. We've been doing these top 100 brand tables for about 15 years now. And there's gazillions of tables out there, guys. Some of them are really good. Some of them are total crap. But at least the conversation is out there, which for me is actually a step in the right direction for sure. Best global brands. At the moment, my biggest issue with best global brands, of course, is that we don't have a single South African or African brand on that table whatsoever. We've done some submissions this year, and it looks like we'll probably get the first 2, maybe even 3 South African brands featuring in the world's top 100 brands by value. The only reason that they've been excluded in the past is that quite a few of our brands are not multi-continental. So to be properly global, we need to be on more than 3 continents. So it's a step past the Americans, where they have the World Series and it only involves California. So we're working on this a bit. All right, so basically these companies, we have a look at, it's where we've got publicly available information on their finances. And I think the great learning about doing the Best Global Brands tables is that we get to have a look at hundreds and hundreds of the world's best companies every single year. We do the top brands for China, we do it for Australia, both brands there. A lot for South America and these developing economies as well. It gives us a great chance to understand what drives brand value, what drives brand strength. And it's these kind of learnings that you only kind of pick up, if you like, with lots of experience. No surprise, the big one, of course, is Coca-Cola again. And I think Coke's been there probably pretty much since day one. And Coke is still one of the best branding stories in the world. I suppose fast being caught up by Apple and the likes. But the Coke brand currently sits at a value of about 71.8, call it 72 billion US dollars. So that's about $500 billion South African rands. Okay. It's a huge amount of money. I think what they've done from a branding point of view is perfect. I mean, the product is quite bizarre. It's colored water, let's face it. It's not particularly healthy. Sugar obesity. The other guys that do it really well are the tobacco companies. The ability to create a brand and create such value in it for a product that is pretty arbitrary is certainly quite clever. I think the big thing that we're seeing right now is, of course, the catch-up. And the technology companies are going ballistic. We've seen a few of them, obviously, that have fallen off the tables as well. But the likes of Apple, of course, is a great one. The table we're looking at here was done in October of 2011. So our next table comes out in about 2 months' time. The one thing that I'm quite keen to have a look at is the impact of the passing of Steve Jobs on the Apple brand. So certainly a very sad thing, a very interesting individual. When we did the table at the end of last year, one of the big questions was, Steve had then stepped out as the CEO, and there was concerns about the impact of that. But of course, the brand it rose nicely again. It went up 58% in value, largely based on the iPad. So a great premium in the brand just for innovation. And you can't have great brands with lousy products. So I mean, that's got to be pretty clear. Amazon was nearly down the tubes a couple of years ago. They've now, who wanted a book delivered to their house when you could buy all the things online? But changing their business model massively to become a personalized shopping experience for anything, and certainly going into the digital space. Great. They use their brand to reinvent their business, and that's exactly where the trick sits. Google, story in its own right. Samsung, great story. The Samsung brand was relatively unknown, 12 years ago, very much a component brand. Is doing some fantastic work. Kicked Sony right out the market. Absolutely bizarre. In the cell phone market, the disappearance largely of Nokia is quite bizarre. So stunning brands. And then some luxury brands, going into BlueBerry and others as well. So I won't dwell on these. Google, $55 billion, that's okay. Samsung, $23 billion, etc. Biggest decliners, Nokia. They lost the plot. And this is an old company. They used to grow trees. You all know the story about Nokia. So they've reinvented themselves well over a long period of time and have now just forgotten what their brand is about and forgotten how it drives their business. And they've dropped massively. Nintendo, we did a chunk of work for them. We did the whole Wii brand and what have you, which was great fun and a very, very clever organization to work with. But subsequent to that, it's just it's faltered. It's stuttered in mid-step. And you don't win in a day and stay there. You've got to carry on winning. Sony, same story. Yahoo, disaster. Dell, disaster. The thing that makes me grumpy, I suppose, is I'm not anti-American. A lot of my bosses are American, bless their souls. But of course, the US got branding from day one. The United States as a brand is awesome. They also had the right platform. They made all the movies. So they had that propaganda platform, if you like. Made smoking cigarettes cool and all those ridiculous things. But they got branding, and they get branding, and they still get branding really well. And it's something that the rest of the world, particularly the East, is now catching up on quite fast. So half the top 100 brands, no surprise, came out the US. But we are seeing some nice new entrants from the likes of Taiwan and smaller countries, Finland and a few others. By sector, this is going to be the biggest change, I think, going forward. We're seeing the sector used to be dominated quite a lot by consumer and financial brands. I think obviously the financial crisis has soured a few financial brands around the world. old is not necessarily good, etc., etc. And we're seeing far more electronic brands now entering the fray. And you'll see it more in the IT side, of course, as well. All right.